Today we are of course in our focus of C++ as the entire course, as we will discuss in our channel, and we want now to understand what variables are and how we can implement the variables. Of course, don't forget to subscribe, and as usual you are on Coordinate. So from here, of course, like we were learning in our early grades, I don't know if that's the 5th or 6th grade, we were learning that a variable is simply a placeholder of something. We were being given examples of y is equal to 24, let's just say 14. So when you say y is equal to 14, we are of course understanding that whenever we see y, we should think of 14. Or whenever we see 14, we should be thinking of y. And that's the same principle even today when it comes to variables. When in C++ and any other programming language, variables are simply placeholders of something. So today we have, of course, a cool course because we want to understand what variables are and how they can be implemented when it comes to C++. So to understand the implementation of variables in C++, we need to understand how to implement key words like variable declaration, variable initialization, and variable assignment. Now, for all these three terminologies to be understood, we need to understand the syntax of initializing, declaring, and assigning a variable, which is called type, then variable name, and of course the value. So in this line, we are saying for we to declare now a variable, we need to know what type of a variable are we trying to declare. Like many people define variables as a container. The type just entails that, okay, you want to create a container now. What type of a container do you want to create? Is it a container to hold whole numbers? Is it a container to hold maybe strings? Is it the container to hold decimal related numbers? Is it the container to hold anything, characters, or such type of a container? So now this is what the type specifies. Now since we've not paid much attention to the types, which since they come from data types, as we will see and understand the critical part of data types in the third tutorial, I'm sure, from this video, we'll now just talk about one type of variables, which is called int, which stands in for integers. And if you understand what integers are, of course you will tell that, oh, integers, we are now talking about whole numbers. So this is what we'll talk as a type of variable. So we should have a type, and then we should have the variable name. The variable name, practically in our lives, we should think of it like, okay, I want to create a container to hold whole numbers, since that's what int tells. Okay, now what's the name of a container actually that I want to create? Should I give it container for keeping cooking oil, container for keeping hot, or container for keeping what? That's what a variable name is. It's simply what's the name of the container. So let's now try to create a container to hold maybe the age of a certain individual. So we'll call this container age, and of course we are just saying this age as a container, what's the first age that it should hold? And then okay, let this container hold 35 as an age. So now we are saying, we've declared and initialized a variable. So we are saying I've created a variable of type int because I want to know what type of a container am I creating, and the name of this container or this placeholder is called age, and this age is equal to 35. So whenever you see 35, you should know, okay, that's the value that's in age as a container. So since we've already learned about how to print out something on the screen, that's through the use of the cout statement, we can now see if of course age is equal to 35. And if you want to see out a variable, of course these we've all learned and how they work, we just say, okay, cout age, and immediately when you see out age, we should see 35 on our console. That's our black window. So okay, let's now compile and run. of course, we've commented out before we print out this thing. We've commented out this since we just wanted to illustrate, and we've already learned about comments, so I'm sure you understand why we've done this. It's because this explains what's being done in the next line. So now let's compile and run. We see if, of course, 35 is what will be printed out on the screen, since it's a container that is holding on 35 as an age. Of course, when it comes to the console, we now have 35 given out on the screen as an age. So yes, a variable, we can now understand that it is simply a placeholder. Don't forget, what type of a variable are you making? That's what int stands in for. So we're making a variable to hold whole numbers. Then what's the name of the variable? Age. Of course, what's the thing that you want to input into age? 35. So now this is another way that we could use if we want to declare and do anything related to variables. Another way that we could use to assign a value into a variable, we should of course do that on the next line or another line. So this line, since we've shortened it, we've just specified that we've now declared a variable. We've more like created a variable that's called age, but we don't know yet the content of age. So for we to implement a content now, we can say, okay, age, the variable that we made previously, is equal to, let's say now 38. Of course, if we see out 38, we'll see 38 like we were doing from our previous sessions. But for now, what will we see if we see out age? Let's compile and run. Since age is again holding on to 38, we'll see 38. That's how variables work. Now, variables again, of course, we need to understand that when we have variables like this one, we can of course overwrite the previous content that's inside the variable by reassigning it to another value. For example, we can say age is equal to 13. So since we've said age is equal to 13 and we now want to see out age, of course we need to understand that when it comes to variables, immediately you place another value in the variable that holds another value, then we overwrite the previous value. So now age is equal to 13. What content will we see on our screen? Is it 38 or 13? Of course, I'm sure you now understand that yes, we will see 14 because we've overwritten the content that's inside the previous. Of course, we now see 13 on our black console and our black window. So this is the very basic thing that entails how variables work. But I'm sure others are now asking, but what if I don't want to overwrite the content that, because I might make it, what if the program is too huge and then I repeat the same variable as I make another program? Well, we can again forbid overwriting a variable by of course placing something. Of course, let's now come back on one line by placing a certain keyword as we declare and initialize our variable for the first time. So we can use the keyword const, which stands in for constant. And I'm sure if you pay much attention to the word const or constant, you can even tell that, oh, it's a constant word now. I don't want to see anything changing this or this variable. So now we are saying, okay, variable of type int, which is named age with a 38, should not be changed. It should be constant to 38. Let's compile and run. Whilst we've now initialized another value inside the age. Of course, we should say an error because we have restricted the issue of overwriting that variable. Let's compile and run. Of course, we have an error called assign of read-only variable age because of course we've specified that this should be a constant thingy. But for now, since we've removed that, this program should now run and print out 37 because it's a constant variable and we've not of course overwritten by reassigning it another value. So this is the very basic information you need to have when it comes to variables. And in summarization, we can say to work with variables we need to know the type of a variable we are working with. also the variable name, and the value that we want to input or to save inside that same variable name. If we don't want to do any changes to the variable name, we should use the keyword const, which stands in for constant, because this won't allow anything to be added or to override a certain value that's inside that variable. Thank you very much, friends, and please don't forget to subscribe. Let's proceed on our next session as we proceed with our course of C++ and you are one coordinate.